The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as the afternoon rush buzzed through the cozy little cafe. Jake wiped his hands on his apron, barely paying attention to the constant hum of orders. He had been working here for months now, and in that time, he had developed a sharp instinct about people. He could tell who deserved good service, and who didn't. That's why, when the bell above the door chimed, and a man strolled in wearing a red MAGA hat, Jake's mood soured instantly. He had seen people like this before, loud, entitled, always ready for an argument. The cafe had a certain vibe, a welcoming place for the right kind of people. But not this guy. The man stepped up to the counter, scanning the menu like he had all the time in the world. His presence alone was enough to make Jake's patience wear thin. Finally, the man looked up. "Hey there, I'll take a..." Jake didn't let him finish. His voice was cold, cutting through the chatter of the cafe. "We don't serve people like you." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. For a moment, the man simply blinked, his expression unreadable. Then, a small, amused smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "People like me," he repeated, his voice calm, too calm. Jake crossed his arms. "Yeah. We have a standard here. And that hat? Doesn't fit." A hush fell over the cafe. Customers exchanged uneasy glances. Even the other barista behind the counter shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very aware that something big was happening. But Jake didn't care. He felt righteous, like he was standing for something important. The man studied him for a long moment, then, without a word, he reached into his pocket. A sleek black key fob appeared in his hand. With one effortless motion, he pressed a button. Click. The cafe's lights flickered. The massive digital menu behind Jake's head shut off. The soft hum of the espresso machine died. The entire shop fell into an eerie, unnatural silence. Jake's heart skipped a beat. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The man tilted his head slightly. "That's interesting," he murmured, his voice as casual as if he were commenting on the weather. "I don't remember hiring a barista who decides who gets served." Jake's blood ran cold. Hiring? Slowly, too slowly, his mind began piecing it together. The confidence. The way the man carried himself. And now, the complete control over the shop's systems. Jake's breath hitched. No. It couldn't be. The man picked up his hat, dusted it off, then looked Jake dead in the eye. "Let me reintroduce myself. I own this place." For the first time in his life, Jake had no comeback. The cafe, once filled with lively chatter, was now frozen in complete silence. Every single person in the room had just witnessed something unbelievable. And Jake? He had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Jake felt his stomach drop. The cafe was dead silent, every customer frozen in place, eyes darting between him and the man standing calmly across the counter. The man who just revealed he owned the place. A nervous laugh escaped Jake's lips, but it sounded forced, dry. His brain scrambled for an explanation, a way to undo what had just happened. Maybe this was a prank. Maybe this guy was just messing with him. But deep down, Jake already knew the truth. He swallowed hard. "You're joking, right?" The man, Elon Musk, tilted his head slightly, watching him with an expression that was impossible to read. Not angry. Not amused. Just observing. "I don't usually joke about my businesses," he said finally, sliding the key fob back into his pocket. Jake's heart pounded against his ribs. He could feel the weight of the moment settling in, the realization that he had just insulted and refused service to one of the most powerful men in the world. And he had done it with an audience. A few customers shifted awkwardly in their seats, suddenly very interested in their coffee cups. Others had their phones out, subtle but obvious, recording. Jake's face was probably already being shared online. He forced a breath and straightened his shoulders. "Look," he said, trying to steady his voice, "I didn't know. If I had known..." Elon cut him off with a small, knowing smile. Ah. So if you had known I was the owner, it would have been different. Jake felt the trap before he even stepped into it. He clenched his jaw, trying to find a way out. There wasn't one. If he said yes, he'd sound like a hypocrite. If he said no, well, he had already seen what no had gotten him. Elon leaned slightly on the counter. "Tell me," he said casually, "what exactly does this hat stand for?" Jake exhaled sharply. He didn't want to get into this. Not now. Not with him. But Elon just waited, patient, as if he had all the time in the world. Jake hesitated. It represents a certain kind of people. A certain mindset. And I don't think we should encourage that here. Elon nodded slowly, as if considering the words. A certain kind of people, he repeated, rolling the phrase over like he was testing the weight of it. And you decide who those people are. Jake opened his mouth, then closed it again. The power dynamic had shifted completely. A minute ago, he had been the one in control, the one making the rules. Now, he was completely at the mercy of the man across the counter. His hands, resting on the espresso machine, felt clammy. His mind raced through a dozen ways this could go. Would Elon fire him on the spot? Would he make a scene? Would this moment be the kind of thing that went viral and ruined his life? The other barista, Mia, was watching everything with wide, panicked eyes. She didn't say a word, but her expression screamed, "What the hell are you doing? Fix this." Jake cleared his throat, trying to regain some footing. "Look," he said, forcing his voice to be even. "I wasn't trying to." Elon raised a hand, stopping him. That small motion alone was enough to make Jake go silent. For the first time, Elon's expression shifted. The amusement faded slightly, replaced by something calmer. Something unreadable. "You know," he said after a beat, "I started my first business because someone told me I didn't belong in the industry. Said I didn't fit the mold. That I wasn't the right kind of person for it." He smiled slightly. Funny how that works. Jake felt a chill run through him. He wanted to defend himself. Wanted to argue that it wasn't the same thing. That this was different. But was it? Elon straightened, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I'm not going to fire you," he said suddenly, almost like he had read Jake's mind. Jake blinked. "You're not?" Elon shook his head. "No. But I am going to do something else." Jake stiffened. "What?" Elon's eyes gleamed with something close to mischief. He leaned in slightly. "You'll find out soon." And with that, he turned, grabbed his hat, and walked out the door. Jake stood there, heart hammering, watching him disappear down the street. He could feel the weight of the stairs still on him, could hear the low murmurs of the customers as they started whispering to each other. Mia exhaled loudly beside him, like she had been holding her breath the entire time. She turned to him, eyes still wide. "Jake," she said, her voice a mixture of shock and disbelief. He swallowed. "Yeah?" She shook her head. "I think you just screwed up way bigger than you even realize." Jake didn't answer. Because he knew she was right. And he had no idea what was coming next. Jake barely slept that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Would Elon Musk really just walk away and forget about what happened? No way. The customers had seen everything. Some had even recorded it. By now, the video was probably everywhere. By morning, Jake's phone was already blowing up. His notifications were a mess: texts, missed calls, and unread messages from people he hadn't spoken to in years. This wasn't good. Mia was the first one to call. The second he picked up, she didn't even say hello. "Jake. Check Twitter. Now." His stomach tightened. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen before finally opening the app. And there it was. A trending video with the caption, "Barista refuses to serve Elon Musk, instantly regrets it." Jake's throat went dry. The clip had been cut perfectly to make him look as bad as possible. It showed him refusing service, looking smug, acting like he had all the power, and then Elon dropping the bomb that he owned the place. The replies were brutal. This dude just ruined his whole career in 30 seconds. Imagine telling the guy who literally owns the cafe that he can't be served. Elon handled that way too well. Barista thought he was in control. Jake's fingers tightened around the phone. He forced himself to breathe. Okay. Stay calm. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. Maybe it would blow over. But deep down, he knew better. The real question was, what was Elon going to do? Jake got his answer sooner than expected. When he walked into the cafe for his shift, something felt off. The usual morning rush was busier than ever. The line stretched out the door. Customers were talking in hushed voices, eyes flicking toward him as he entered. Mia was already behind the counter, pulling shots at double speed. When she saw him, she gave him a look. A mix of pity and "I told you so." Jake barely had time to process it before the manager, Greg, stormed toward him. Office. Now. Jake swallowed hard. Here it comes. The second he stepped into the back room, Greg shut the door behind him. His face was red, his jaw tight. He pulled out his phone, opened Twitter, and shoved the screen in Jake's face. This. What the hell is this, Jake? Jake stared at the screen, even though he already knew what was there. Greg ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. Do you have any idea what kind of mess this is? I've got corporate breathing down my neck. We've had news outlets calling the store. People outside taking pictures. And guess what? Our owner hasn't even said a word yet. He's just watching. Jake flinched. The idea of Elon waiting, planning something, made his chest feel tight. Jake started, but Greg cut him off. You better hope Musk doesn't decide to make an example out of you. Because right now, you're on thin ice. Jake nodded stiffly. So, what happens now? Greg rubbed his temples. For now, you work. But if Elon walks through that door again, do not say a word. Jake left the office, his heart pounding. The second he stepped behind the counter, he felt it. The customers were watching him. Judging him. Half the people in line weren't even there for coffee. They were there to see him. The barista who had tried to humiliate Elon Musk and ended up looking like a fool. And then, just when he thought things couldn't get worse, the door opened. The bell chimed. A few people gasped. Others whispered. Jake didn't have to look to know who had just walked in. But he did anyway. Elon Musk stood at the front of the cafe, calm, composed, unreadable. And next to him was a man in a sharp suit, someone who looked important. Someone who didn't just walk into coffee shops for no reason. Jake's pulse skyrocketed. Elon met his gaze, then smiled slightly. Not unkind. Not cruel. But like he knew something Jake didn't. Then, with quiet confidence, Elon walked to the counter and spoke 3 words. We need to talk. And just like that, Jake's world shifted again. Jake felt his throat tighten. The entire cafe had gone silent, every pair of eyes locked onto him, waiting to see what would happen next. His hands, clammy with sweat, gripped the edge of the counter. Elon Musk stood there, calm, unreadable, yet completely in control. The man beside him, sharp-suited and serious, didn't say a word. Jake knew he had no choice. Without looking at Mia, without acknowledging the sea of curious onlookers, he stepped out from behind the counter. His legs felt stiff, his breath uneven, but he forced himself forward. Elon led the way, moving with the effortless confidence of a man used to owning every room he walked into. The suited man followed, and Jake trailed behind, his heartbeat thunderous in his ears. They entered the small back office where Greg had lectured him just earlier. The air felt thick with tension. Jake's manager looked up from his desk, his face tight with stress. Elon, Greg greeted cautiously, standing halfway. His voice had a strained politeness, like he wasn't sure whether he was addressing a guest or his worst nightmare. Elon simply nodded, then turned to Jake. "Sit." Jake did. The chair felt unsteady beneath him. The suited man remained standing near the door, his hands folded neatly in front of him. Elon leaned against the desk, arms crossed. He studied Jake for a moment, long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then he finally spoke. "You made an assumption about me," he said. His voice wasn't angry, but it held weight. "You saw a hat. You made a decision. And now? The internet has made a decision about you." Jake clenched his fists. He wanted to defend himself, wanted to explain, but nothing he could say would change what had happened. The video was already out there. The damage was already done. Elon continued, his tone even. "Do you know how many people have sent me this clip?" He gestured vaguely, as if the number was too ridiculous to count. "Hundreds. Maybe thousands. And you know what they're all asking?" Jake swallowed hard. "What?" Elon leaned forward slightly. "What am I going to do about you?" The words sent a cold wave down Jake's spine. Greg shifted uncomfortably in the background. The suited man, still silent, barely blinked. Jake forced himself to breathe. He started, but Elon held up a hand, stopping him. "You're not fired," Elon said. "Not yet, at least." Jake blinked. "Not yet?" Elon tilted his head. "Tell me, Jake. What would you do, if you were in my position?" Jake hesitated. He could feel every answer forming in his mind, an apology, an excuse, a desperate plea to keep his job. But none of them felt right. Because deep down, he knew the truth. If the roles were reversed, if he had the power, if someone had embarrassed him in front of an entire store and millions of people online, he wouldn't just let it go. He wouldn't forget. Jake exhaled shakily. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Elon studied him again, his expression shifting. "That's honest," he said. "I respect honesty." For a brief second, Jake almost felt relief. But then Elon's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile, one that wasn't reassuring at all. "You're going to work your shift today," Elon said casually. "In fact, you're going to work every shift for the next 2 weeks. But there's one condition." Jake tensed. "What is it?" Elon glanced at the suited man, then back at Jake. "We're going to make this right. And you're going to help me do it." Jake didn't understand at first. Make this right? What did that mean? But then Elon's expression turned almost amused. "Oh," he added lightly, "and it's going to be live-streamed." Jake's stomach dropped. "Live-streamed?" Greg visibly paled. The suited man's face remained unreadable. Jake felt a wave of panic rise inside him. He had just become the center of a story that was way bigger than him. And the worst part? He had no idea what was coming next. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Live-streamed? His mind raced, trying to process what that meant. Would he be forced to apologize? Would Elon humiliate him in front of millions just like he had done, unintentionally, at the cafe? The weight of the situation pressed down on him like a crushing force. Greg cleared his throat. Mr. Musk, are you sure about this?" His voice wavered slightly. Even he seemed nervous about whatever was about to unfold. Elon just smiled, a small, unreadable smirk. "Oh, I'm sure." Then he turned to Jake. "You wanted to make a statement that day, right? You wanted to take a stand for what you believed in." He gestured with a slight shrug. "Well, now it's my turn." Jake had no idea what that meant, but he wasn't in a position to argue. His hands were cold, his heart pounding against his ribs. "And if I say no?" he asked cautiously. Elon's smirk didn't falter. "Then you walk away, and this cafe moves on without you." Jake swallowed hard. There it was, the real choice. He could leave, but then what? His reputation was already ruined. His name was trending for all the wrong reasons, and if he quit now, it would look even worse. He had no idea what Elon had planned, but walking away wasn't an option. He exhaled shakily. "Fine," he said. "I'll do it." Elon clapped his hands together. "Good." Then, without missing a beat, he pulled out his phone. With a few quick taps, he lifted it up, pointing the camera directly at Jake. "Let's begin." Jake's breath caught in his throat. "Wait, now? Right here?" Before he could react, Elon started speaking. "Hey, everyone. I know you've all seen the clip by now. This barista here, Jake, made a decision. And today, we're going to talk about it." The comments exploded instantly. Jake couldn't see them, but he could feel the energy shift. The cafe had fallen into absolute silence. Every customer, every employee was frozen, watching this unfold in real time. Jake forced himself to breathe, his mind blank. He had prepared for a conversation, for a private discussion, but not this. Elon turned the camera toward him. "Jake, tell everyone what you were thinking that day." Jake felt the heat of 1,000 invisible eyes on him. His throat was dry. He wanted to disappear. But he also knew he had no choice. His voice cracked, but he pushed forward. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I made an assumption about you. About what you stood for." Elon nodded, still calm. "And do you think that was fair?" Jake hesitated. He wanted to defend himself. To explain that he wasn't a bad person, that he had just reacted. But the truth was undeniable. He had judged Elon without knowing him. "No," he admitted finally. "It wasn't fair." Elon's expression didn't change. "So, if we're being fair now, would you like to know why I was wearing that hat?" Jake blinked. That wasn't what he expected. "Why?" Elon tilted his head. "It was a bet." The room went completely still. "A bet?" Jake repeated, barely able to process it. Elon grinned. "Yeah. My friend told me I wouldn't last an hour in public without people making assumptions. I told him I could. Clearly, I lost." Jake felt his stomach drop. The entire internet had blown up over a joke? A harmless bet between friends? And he had been the one to turn it into something bigger? The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Elon leaned back against the desk, watching him carefully. "Funny, isn't it?" he mused. "How fast things can spiral." Jake felt like he was going to be sick. His entire world had just shifted again. Everything he thought he knew about this situation had just been flipped on its head. And then Elon did something Jake didn't expect. He turned back to the camera and said, "Now let's talk about what happens next." Jake's pulse skyrocketed. Next? What did he mean, next? Elon's expression remained unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a look that told Jake the game wasn't over yet. If anything, it was just beginning. Jake's mind was spinning. A bet? All of this, the chaos, the backlash, his name being dragged across the internet, had started because of a simple bet? He felt his stomach churn, but there was no time to process it. Elon was still live, and millions of people were watching. Elon leaned against the desk, his posture relaxed, but his eyes were sharp. "Now that we've got some context," he said, "let's talk about what happens next." He turned the camera back to Jake. "Because the real question is, what do you do when you realize you've made a mistake?" Jake felt the weight of that question settle in his chest. He had spent the last few days feeling defensive, angry even. But now, looking at the situation for what it was, he saw it clearly. He had judged someone unfairly. He had let his own assumptions cloud his actions, and now, the consequences were playing out in front of the entire world. He exhaled. "I take responsibility," he said. His voice was steady this time. "I messed up. I let my personal biases get in the way of my job, and I treated a customer unfairly." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Even if that customer was me?" Jake met his gaze. Especially because it was you. The comments were going crazy. He could hear the notifications, see the glow of phone screens in the hands of customers watching live. His face was everywhere now, and there was no taking it back. Elon nodded. That's a good answer, he said. But words are easy. Actions matter more. Jake stiffened. What do you mean? Elon grinned. Well, I own this cafe, remember? Which means I get to decide how we make things right. He turned back to the camera. So here's the deal, Jake is going to run this cafe for a full week. Every shift, every responsibility. And at the end of the week, he's going to donate his paycheck to a cause of his choice. That way, he learns something, and someone else benefits. Jake's breath caught. Run the cafe? He barely held it together as a barista. Now he was supposed to be in charge? Greg looked like he had just swallowed a lemon. Elon, are you serious? Elon smirked. Completely. Jake's mind raced. This was insane. But then again, maybe it was the best possible outcome. He could prove he wasn't just some stubborn guy who refused to change. He could actually do something good. He swallowed hard and nodded. All right, he said. I'll do it. The cafe erupted in murmurs, a mix of surprise and intrigue. Elon clapped his hands together. Perfect. First shift starts tomorrow. He ended the live stream, slipping his phone back into his pocket. Then, he looked at Jake, his expression unreadable. Let's see what you're really made of. Jake nodded, feeling a strange mix of nerves and determination. This wasn't where he expected his day to go, but maybe, just maybe, this was his second chance. But just as he thought the stone was settling, Greg cleared his throat. There's something else, he said hesitantly. Elon turned to him. Oh? Greg shifted uncomfortably. Jake wasn't the only one involved in what happened that day. Jake's stomach dropped. Greg hesitated, then turned his phone screen toward Elon. A new video was going viral, one that hadn't been seen before. The footage was grainy, taken from another angle in the cafe, but the audio was crystal clear. And the voice on it. Mia. She was laughing, nudging Jake. Come on, if we don't serve him, maybe he'll just leave. Let someone else deal with him. Jake's breath hitched. No. The video kept playing, showing the moment Jake had hesitated at the counter, looking toward Mia for confirmation. And there it was, the moment she had egged him on. Elon's expression remained neutral, but Jake felt the blood drain from his face. He had taken full responsibility, ready to accept the consequences. But now? Now the truth was out. Elon met Jake's eyes. Looks like you weren't alone in this. Jake's pulse pounded. He had just agreed to run the cafe, prove himself. But now? Now someone else was about to be exposed. And the worst part? He had no idea how Mia was going to handle it. A heavy silence filled the cafe. Jake felt his heart hammering in his chest as Elon studied the video on Greg's phone. Mia's voice, her words, the way she nudged him, it was all there, clear as day. The realization settled over him like a crushing weight. He hadn't been the only one responsible for what happened, but he had been the one to take all the heat. The internet had torn him apart, and now Mia was about to face the same fate. Mia, who had stood behind him every shift. Mia, who had whispered, let someone else deal with him. Jake swallowed hard, his throat dry. He turned, searching for her in the cafe, and found her standing near the register. Her face was pale, her hands gripping the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had seen the video. She knew what was coming. Elon handed Greg's phone back without a word, his expression unreadable. The seconds stretched, the tension unbearable. Then, finally, he spoke. Mia. His tone was calm, but there was a weight behind it that made everyone in the cafe go still. Anything you want to say? Mia's lips parted slightly, but no words came out at first. She looked at Jake, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. Guilt? Fear? Then, with a shaky breath, she straightened up. I messed up, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I encouraged it. I thought it was just, she stopped herself, shaking her head. No. No excuses. I just didn't think. Elon studied her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. That's fair. He glanced at Jake, then back at Mia. So, what do we do about this? Jake hesitated. He had spent the past few days paying for his mistake, for what he thought had been his alone. But now, the truth was out. And the easy thing, the vengeful thing, would be to let Mia take the fall. But that wasn't who he wanted to be. Jake took a deep breath. Mia should work with me, he said, surprising even himself. We both made a mistake. We both fix it. Mia's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected him to say that. The cafe buzzed with murmurs. Even Greg looked taken aback. But Elon just smiled, a small, knowing smile. You're learning fast, he said. Then he turned to Mia. What do you think? Mia hesitated for only a second before nodding. I'll do it. Her voice was steadier now. If Jake's doing this, I will too. Elon clapped his hands together. Great. You two just became co-managers for the next week. He glanced at Greg. Make sure they don't burn the place down. Greg groaned. No promises. A nervous laugh rippled through the cafe, breaking the heavy tension that had settled over the room. Jake exhaled, feeling the weight lift just a little. It wasn't over, but at least now, he wasn't alone in this. The next few days were brutal. Jake and Mia weren't just making coffee, they were running everything. Inventory, scheduling, handling customer complaints. The internet hadn't let up either. While some people admired Jake for owning up to his mistake, others still saw him as the barista who had refused service to one of the richest men on the planet. Mia's name had now entered the storm too, and she was facing the same scrutiny he had. But something changed in those long shifts. For the first time, Jake saw just how much work went into keeping the cafe running. The pressure of every decision. The responsibility of making sure customers left happy, that employees felt valued. And Mia, who had always seemed so confident before, was struggling right alongside him. They both were. On the fourth night, after an exhausting shift, they sat outside the cafe, drinking what had to be their 100th cup of coffee that week. Mia let out a heavy sigh. I never thought I'd say this, but I get it now. Jake glanced at her. Get what? She gave a small, tired smile. Why Greg was always so stressed. Why decisions matter. Why we shouldn't have handled things the way we did. She shook her head. I thought I was just backing you up that day. But really? I was making things worse. Jake looked down at his cup. He thought about how quickly things had spiraled that day. How one decision, one assumption, had changed everything. We both did, he admitted. But we're fixing it now. Mia smirked. Yeah. By drowning in espresso. Jake chuckled. Could be worse. Their week as co-managers wasn't perfect. They messed up orders, overstaffed one day and understaffed another. But slowly, they started getting better. They listened more. They handled customers differently. They learned. On the final day of their punishment, Elon walked into the cafe just before closing. The moment he did, the entire place fell silent again. People were still waiting to see how this story would end. Elon walked up to the counter, hands in his pockets. So, he said, glancing between them. Did you learn anything? Jake and Mia exchanged a look before nodding. Yeah, Jake said. A lot. Elon smirked. Good. He gestured toward the register. Then I'd like to order a coffee. You gonna serve me this time? Jake didn't hesitate. Absolutely. He moved to the espresso machine, hands steady as he made the drink. When he handed it to Elon, there was no tension, no hesitation. Just a moment of clarity. Elon took a sip and nodded approvingly. Not bad. He pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, then back at them. Well, you survived. And people love a redemption arc. He tapped his screen a few times. Check your phones. Jake pulled out his phone, heart pounding as a notification popped up. A tweet. From Elon. 2 baristas, 1 mistake, a week of hard work. Redemption is earned, not given. And the coffee? 10 out of 10. Hashtag second chances. Jake's breath hitched. His name was no longer trending for the mistake, it was trending for the comeback. Mia let out a breathy laugh, staring at her own phone. I can't believe this is real. Elon smirked. Believe it. Oh, and by the way, he turned to Greg. These 2 still have jobs here if they want them. Greg rolled his eyes. Of course they do. Jake felt something settle in his chest, a feeling he hadn't had in days. Relief. As Elon walked toward the door, he turned back one last time. Remember, guys. Everyone messes up. It's what you do after that matters. Then, with a nod, he was gone. Jake stood there for a moment, processing everything. Then, he turned to Mia and smirked. So, co-managers? Mia groaned. Don't push your luck. The cafe buzzed with energy, the tension from the past week finally lifting. Mistakes had been made, lessons had been learned, and in the end, it wasn't about what had happened. It was about what they did next.